Thanks, Chris. So, it's November, right? It's been a little bit since we talked about this. Taking again off reviewer hat, putting on consumer hat, Chris. Okay, what are my thoughts on things? What's on my hot list? What's on my wish list? What's on my I'm playing, I'm loving to play, I want to get played more list right now, right? That's what we're talking about again. Because, again, I always think this is a good topic to be as transparent about as possible. Because I think there's always the question of, is he talking about it because he actually likes it? Or is he talking about it because someone sent it to him? As someone else just accused me in the comment section last night. You're just not being critical because you're just getting all this stuff sent to you for free. Ironically, the comment was on the video where I tell people not to back anything, right? Where I'm like literally the only person out there that's saying, hey, don't back stuff. And any sort of mass appeal. So the irony of that was just completely... Anyway, get into the good stuff though. First up and foremost, right? Slay the Spire. I had it in my cart, and you guys have heard this before, but I was literally about to buy it. All of a sudden, Boardlandia had their sort of November sale of like 15% off everything. And so I was just like seeing who had it in stock, and they just happened to have it in stock. Put it in my cart for $100. All of a sudden, it's $85 because it's 15% off. And I'm like, holy cow! And then I had just hesitations, as I tend to do on the retail side of things, right? And I waited about 5 or 6 hours, and then in that meantime, Board Game Geek users picked up on it, and then they're like, blasted it! And everyone else then saw it, and by the time I went back to my cart after that, it was out of stock. So, time of me filming this, if I can sell a few things this weekend, I'm probably going to pull the trigger on it and formally get it so I can weigh in whether or not it is one of the best games of 2024 or not. Dead Cells has been tempting, but I think the gameplay loop I'm going to be more intrigued with from Slay the Spire. Second up, right here, right? These are actually still both in shrink. I'm going to be cracking the shrink shortly after this video because I'm going to now experience the wonderness, the joy wonderness. Yeah, that's what you get on this channel. Because why not, right? Everything has to be so pristine and formulaic and monotonous and mechanical, and you have to have a script, otherwise you're doing it wrong. Screw it, right? So, Bestial Forces and Malefic Curses. I've got 2 copies right here of the expansions for Wiz War 8th edition, and I think this is a fantastic game, and this is a game I would recommend to anyone that can actually get a copy. But it's chaotic. It's craziness. It's the most take that of the take that's. You know, you only need 2 points to win, right? How hard is that? Are both of these going to be as good as I hope they are? I have no idea. I have absolutely no idea. At the same time, I don't really care because it's one of those games where the fun factor is going to, well, outweigh any of the mechanistic criticisms that I'm going to have, right? This is going to be me being biased and a simp towards it regardless. So if it just gives me more chaos and I can mix and match now, yep, I'm pretty much okay with this because I actually got them both pretty much at face value off of eBay. Because, you know, I did the whole eBay save your search thing, let you know when something pops up, got them each for $40. $40, new and shrink, you can't find them anymore, period. But that also begs the question, I actually have a copy of Bestial Forces, a used one now, so I'm probably going to try and get rid of that one on the cheap. So if you want a copy of Bestial Forces on the cheap, well, hit me up in the comment section down below. And this was sent to me as a review copy, so, you know, truth be told, taking my hat off, though, as a reviewer. Agent Avenue. Nerd Lab Games, right? If you're a fan of Mindbug, not going to say these, you know, is anything like a Mindbug in the first place, but the creativity in the low overhead, maximizing the chaos, and the sort of done in a different way, I cut you choose style of things with this game, it's not really captured as well in the base game. It's really clever, but it ultimately leaves you a little bit wanting with the base game of just, you know, a couple other different varieties of agents, because all you do is you have your hand of cards and you choose one to put face up and you choose one to put face down, and then the other person has to choose which one they want, right? Prisoner's Dilemma, I guess. If that makes sense. Probably not. I'll just edit that part out, right? But what I'm meaning, though, is that these cards, you might get the bad that's face up might be better than the bad that's face down. Or vice versa. I'm putting the bad face up to meta psych you think you know what I think you know that I think what you're doing is going to happen. And then you're going to take the wrong one because you're going to overthink it. And so that brings the dynamic. But then the black market is the advanced mode where you've got now 4 stats on the board that are going to give you just asymmetric abilities, passives, one-times, or even end game victory conditions being completely and utterly, well, screwball. And screwball in an absolutely fantastic way. Screwball in the sense that you just somehow backed into a win and the other person didn't realize it. And it does it in a fantastic way. High recommendations of this one. If your tastes are like mine. If they're not, just, throw this one out the window and this one's not going to be for you. Then we're going something completely different here. And I got this actually, I think, on a math trade from Board Game Geek. And if you're not familiar, this is the real grand copy of Knizia Classic Samurai. Yeah, I've actually not really played this one to any extent. I've played just partiality of a game, and I just know how it compares having read the rules. And so I'm really excited as someone who loves Babylonia, as loving of a Blue Lagoon situation as I am. And I wasn't as enamored, overall speak, comparatively to Rebirth, although I think Rebirth has some time to grow, especially on the asymmetric side of the second board from Mighty Boards from earlier this year in crowdfunding. Samurai, right? And this is the out-of-print one. And this is the one that just makes me go, okay, is it going to live up to my expectations? And is it going to do what I want it to from those other games and pedigrees and just differences, right? Because I feel like this is one of those types of situations where people are like, well, you can only own one of those, Chris. The truth is, some of these games do stuff significantly different, even though the mechanics are very, very similar on surface value. And, all of those ones that I just mentioned, you got your Tigris and Euphrates, you've got your Yellow and Yangtze, you've got your Babylonia, you've got your Blue Lagoon, you've got Rebirth, you've got Samurai, all of them in that line, but all of them also, giving you maybe the nuance or the flavoring that you like. I mean, right? It's like coffee right now. I just started drinking coffee this past year. I'm really a big fan. What I found is I like more of a darker roast, but it's really hard to tell when you're seeing these descriptions on coffees, right? Of the, the little cinnamon or the burnt sugar aftertaste or the dark cocoa nibs or whatever it may be until you start trying some of them. Some of those adjectives also or explanations don't really give you the am I gonna like it vibe, right? And that's probably what I'm wondering with this the most. Sort of in a similar way, the classic example I've used on the channel a bunch of times is Fit to Print, where I've said real-time tiling. Real-time tiling. I love tiling. I love real-time. The two of those should be a match made in heaven for me, and it failed miserably. And the same thing with the coffee, and the same thing I worry about with something like this, although we'll wait and see. And this is one of those, I picked it up in a math trade in the secondary market. I'd probably be able to sell at this point for well more than the value of something that I traded for it in the first place, because sometimes you do get lucky in those math trades. This is like the only good math trade I think I've ever made on Board Game Geek. But I'm not getting it from that aspect. I'm getting it because I wanted it. And it's the whole reason I have a copy of Yellow Yangtze and didn't end up going around with Huang and the remake from that, because the wooden components in the original are just fantastic. And I looked at the sequel and I said, nope. So I'm okay with this in all aspects. You're going to have to talk me off the ledge on this one. I'm looking simultaneously at Root and Dice Throne Outcasts. This is where my hat of which one I'm wearing is very conflicted. This is where I'm looking at it just from the reviewer side of things versus the consumer side of things, right? Like I'm looking at Root, the Homeland expansion. I'm never going to get a review copy of that. Never going to get a review copy of that. Like I have no dumps about that. Same thing with Dice Throne, right? Adventures Unchained, Adventures, Outcasts, because I want this. I want to do it because I think both of these are going to be amazing. I don't play Root enough, so that's the issue with that. But I also don't necessarily want to wait to get Dice Throne because it's a lot of the clicks and the hotness, right? There's a lot of that, and I, want to be transparent with you, and I struggle with that on some of these crowdfunding projects, right? To be able to get it out there along those lines, because I'm not somebody that does this full time. I'm not someone that gets a huge percentage in that way and in that shape and that form of these games. I also don't want to, try and keep up with the Joneses and pay an extra $20 or $30 on each of these projects potentially just to be able to get, 1,000 views on a video that you guys will forget in a month or less. I'm just having a serious, I don't want to say moral crisis, but just a conflict of interest there within my head, sort of like with Slay the Spire. Am I getting Slay the Spire because I absolutely will love it and I think I'm going to love it? Or am I getting it because I'm trying to ride the hype train? And realistically, the answer is both. But the reason I think I'm going to get Slay the Spire, maybe even shortly after filming this, is because I think I am now no longer questioning, doubting as much, and it's more like 75-25 with Slay the Spire. With Root, it's like 40-60, and Dice Throne Outcast is probably like 45-55 in terms of want it because I want it versus the 55% being want it because I'm going to get some clicks and some views and some... Because again, right, like even if I get it sent as a reviewer, if you're not on that short list of like the top 4 or 5 people, you get it potentially 3 to 6 months down the line after backers. So, right? Again, you're probably going, Chris, these are problems that you never... But this is the stuff that I want you to know what goes on behind the scenes, what goes on behind the camera, what goes on behind the emails, right? This is the stuff I don't see a lot of conversation about. It's either, okay, they send it to me and I cover it, or they don't send it to me and I don't cover it, or maybe I pick it up, or maybe, this is the conversation. This is the stuff behind the scenes that I want you guys to feel like, okay, I know where his head is at. I feel comfortable with why he's talking about stuff. I feel comfortable with why he's telling us about stuff. That is the biggest thing on my channel, is transparency in these regards. So that's why this is such a struggle with me, because even I am, questioning my own intentions, I guess. So the few things I've done that for, like retail trying to do, like it hasn't panned out as much. So again, I am a little bit gun shy in that way, but there you go. Those are 2 that are still out there floating in the nebula. Similarly, I know again in my head that the value, right, isn't there as much as I'd like, but I'm really looking at Simon's Super Fantasy Brawl Reborn. For some reason, Reborn or these 2.0 iterations, they do something to your psyche. They go, okay, Chris, this is going to be better than it was the first time around. So, if you had any inkling or any thought about it previously, this is the time you should get it. This is the stepping in point. This is the absolute best time that you should own this. And I know, even with the base pledge over on the GameFound, it's not a bad deal. It's like 9 characters for $50 plus shipping. But looking at some of the stuff on the secondary market, you got people selling almost the super fan box for anywhere between $60 and $80 too, which has like the base game and like 3 or so expansions to go along with it. Now, the tricky part with that is, similarly with a Yomi or an X-Wing Miniatures or Summoner Wars, right? You can get those first editions. Similarly, I guess also with like Lord of the Rings LCG, you can get the first editions. There's nothing wrong with them. But it's not going to be the newest and shiniest. And even with this one, you can upgrade it like you could with your X-Wing Miniatures game. Get the upgrade kit. It's going to cost you an extra boatload. Is that marketing? Is that FOMO? Or is it, I really just like this 2.0 product better, and this is a better jumping in point? Again, right? The lines are blurred of which one is going on. I'm not super enthralled by Mortal Kombat, right? Like, I've never been a huge Mortal Kombat person. Even growing up, that was not my fighter game of choice. It was Street Fighter. I was Team Street Fighter. But, I feel a little bit more connected with Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. I like the transparency with their second update recently, and they said, hey guys, you are going to pay a little bit more of a premium here with these IPs. And that was the sort of thing that they also said in a little bit of a way with Unmatched Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles as well. And that's truthful. And I appreciate that. Doesn't necessarily change my mind about getting it because it is just, more cost. But I don't mind it either because I know it's there in the first place. I want to see some of the new mechanics. I think honestly, the base characters, sort of like with Dice Throne Outcasts, I kind of like just the base craziness and the not affiliated with an IP style of things, because I think the IP stuff almost is a little bit tricky to navigate sometimes as well, because you have to like keep Raphael close to Raphael. You have to keep Leonardo close to Leonardo. Otherwise, you're going to have purists shouting. And so you can't stray too far. But like the new stuff, this stuff that isn't tied to anything, you can be a little bit more dynamic. You can be a little bit more out there. You can be a little bit more creative. And no one's going to be like, well, that flying raven girl with a griffin beak isn't really the way that should. No one's going to say that. And so you can just do the craziness with that, which is why I like the Dice Throne Outcast, like I mentioned, but like the Necromancer, right? Just make it a 6, make it crazy, make it awesome, break some rules, and just see how it goes. That's what I love, right? Going back to Wiz War earlier in the video. That's what I appreciate. And so I hope that this is going to give it new legs to stand on in those ways from Simon. Switching directions again, Anya. One of the ones I just traded for, Tir Na Nog, Grand Gamers Guild, my local publisher. I'm finally getting a copy of their game. And the dynamics of this are what really are intriguing for me, right? The light, card-driven style of placing your workers down on like the vertices on the edges of these cards, getting them into your tableau, making the best apple salad out of the rotten apples or the absolutely Honeycrisp apples that you have in the first place, or if you're like me, you like Red Delicious or Fuji. But that's what you're doing, and it just does it in a different way with different objectives, win conditions, victory point scoring along the way. I just kind of like the idea of it. So a lot of acclaim. Kind of one that's really flown under the radar. Really should be probably cracking a much higher on lists, but overshot, I think, because it's also a card game. But it's going to be hitting my table very soon, so I'm kind of excited to see. Kind of trepidatious, though, because, again, I'm going in with expectations a little bit higher with this one, which leads me into the next one of games I all of a sudden realized that I should probably own, even though I probably shouldn't at the same time, right? The Crew. Right? I have it. I love it. One of my most played, if not the most played trick-taking game in my collection. A family of euchre players that really love euchre, that are more than amenable to playing this when given a opportunity where I twist their arm and make them play with me. But everyone says, everyone, quote unquote, the consensus is that Deep Sea is better. So, right? Do I just need to get Deep Sea more replayable, better? Have I played the original well enough? Am I going to get Fellowship of the Ring, the trick-taking game, anyway in January? Yeah. But if this is going to cost me another, I don't know, $10 to $14 right now, price-wise, it's probably almost better than anything else in my collection in terms of price per play. So that is something we have to think about. But that leads me, actually, perfect segue. It's almost like I script this. I don't, because you guys know that if you watch the channel. Games that are actually price per play, some of my best in the collection. And surprisingly, or not surprisingly, depending on how long you followed my channel, it's Marvel United. And the issue, though, at the same time is I still don't have my pledge. As you can see on this graphic here, that we have China fulfilled, Indonesia fulfilled, APAC fulfilled, Australia fulfilled, Canada fulfilled, West Coast fulfilled, EU fulfilled, UK barely any missing, rest of the world. But oh, that's right, USA East Coast. Two whole containers aren't even supposed to be arriving on the East Coast. Supposedly, hopefully, these are actually the last two, because the last, like, 3 or 4 updates haven't even said how many containers there were over the last 3 or 4 months, and these have been dragged out. So I am itching to get this, and so I can get it to the table. Literally, this could be my game of the year, and I just may not have it in 2024. First world problems, like I said earlier in the video, right? So that's what I've got, just itching and itching and itching and waiting. At the time of me filming this, have a little bit more on the waste of parts. The follow-up from Isofarian Guard, the folks who brought you that one. Cooperative strategy, 1 to 5 player, controlling a crew of a mech, wasting away across the wastes, essentially. And they say it's not narrative-driven campaign, but single shot, vastly different each time, new world, new lore, new characters. And if it does well, they're saying you might see more of this overarching world in the future. So that one, hopefully you'll be seeing a little bit more shortly on the table. So I'm pumped about that one too. And you know what? Bonus one here at the end. I have a big box of stuff from Into the Unknown sitting by my front door right now. Cycles 4 and 5 from Aeon Trespass freaking Odyssey, right? And I think I have another box coming from them shortly. If you know what I mean. There might be something else that was just announced. There might be something else that's on its way in December. That's right. ENORMITY from Into the Unknown is going to be launching in December. And as a spacefaring horror nemesis meets ISS Vanguard meets Aeon Trespass Odyssey. Whoo, dog. Those are, as someone who has a hard enough time even considering getting into ISS Vanguard. I know. This has been my vibe, though, this game. And so, you know, sometimes you just have one or two that strike your fancy and one or two that don't. Like I said earlier in the video, of those mechanics or approaches or themes or whatever that work when they shouldn't and that don't work when they should. Well, this is the opposite of what I said with Fit to Print, where it should have and it didn't. This is, I'm not doing as much big box stuff in the last year or two, but boy howdy. Ooh yeah, with both of these on the horizon, literally and figuratively. So, and that actually is one of the very few games announced, surprisingly, for crowdfunding in December. So December right now is a barren wasteland at the time of me filming this. So we're going to see what else comes out, because you know something's going to pop its head up. So there you go. That is where my head's at, what my head is thinking about, and what it wants to get played. So there you go. As always, got to put the consumer hat on and just let you know where things are at. So hopefully that was fun, fascinating, or just halfway entertaining. You know what to do. Have a great freaking day. Thanks for watching. I appreciate it.